Welcome to APCUG's Wednesday workshop, where we get together in the middle of the week and learn more about technology. It's March, and we continue with our traditional month of presentations related to backing up. Today we have with us a speaker who's been with us many times, but with so many new people, I just want everybody to know a little bit about Chris Taylor. He's the president of the Ottawa PC User Group. He worked for the Canadian federal government for over 36 years in user and server support, IT architecture, and IT security. Chris has been active in the community user groups for over 45 years. He co-hosts the very popular weekly Q&A sessions hosted by OPCUG, Ottawa PC User Group. Chris has given over 540 some presentations at the Ottawa Public Library on computers and camera related topics. He has given many of his presentations to APCUG member groups and here at our APCUG Wednesday workshops. He's written articles for Glasswire Cybersecurity News and was on the community review board for the Sans Ouch Security newsletter. We've asked Chris to come and share with us one of his most popular presentations, and it's just kind of called, Whoa, Backup. And I'm going to leave it at that and turn things over to Chris, and he's going to talk to us and finish out this month talking about backup as a keynote speaker.
Thanks very much, Sean. Just make sure, okay. Well, before I get to that, I'm just going to get to the chat, and I'm going to paste into the chat both my email address as well as where you can pick up a copy of this presentation as a PDF file. So the presentation today is all about effective strategies for keeping your files safe. And we'll just go ahead and get started. So we're going to look at why you want to back up, and I think most people here know why, but there may be some nuances in there that you're unfamiliar with. And then we'll talk about approaches to backup. First would be just backing up your data, and then backing up everything on your computer. And then we have some information on other considerations that you should think about when you're deciding what backup strategy makes sense for you. So axiom number one, there's two kinds of people, those who have lost data and those who will lose data. And that's almost a given that at some point in time, everybody ends up losing data. The important thing is when you lose the data, can you actually get it back? Axiom number two says the data in only one place is at risk for loss. So if you don't have it at more than one place and you do lose it in one location, then if that's the only location, it's gone for good. Data loss can happen in a lot of different ways. You could have physical destruction of a hard drive. You could have an electrical surge that takes out your computer. You could have a virus. You could have a fire. You could have a theft. Accidental deletion of a file or overwriting a file with some changes that you didn't intend to save. And then I'm going to show you a little bit of a presentation here. And just as a lead into this gentleman, Hudson Henry, he's a photographer in Portland, and he knows what he's doing when it comes to computers. And he even has a tale that is a little bit of a sad tale, but he was prepared to be able to deal with it. As he's going through the video, he talks about Drobo, which is just network attached storage that is anything accessible to all his computers in his location. And he also talks about Backblaze, which is a cloud storage provider. So let's take a look at this particular video.
But what I did, I was actually formatting a smaller hard drive, and I was multitasking and wrapping presents, and we had the whole holiday season happening and people visiting and kids sick and lack of sleep, and I clicked the wrong hard drive and I formatted my big Drobo. I formatted 18 terabytes of data, all my videos, these kinds of videos that I do, instructionals, videos from the field of epic things that I see with wildlife or landscapes and light, time lapse, photos, you name it, 17 terabytes. I formatted it. And when I tried to do a recovery, a lot of it was corrupted. So fortunately, I had the second Drobo with all the data. And right now you can see I'm moving my file with all my images that are in my library back across from one Drobo to the other. It's a little slow flowing through the computer and out from one through the processor and back to the other. It's going to take about 17 hours to move 10 terabytes essentially of photo data. But all that stuff's localized here. If it had been a complete crash, I could always go into Backblaze and request them to mail me hard drives with all that data. I'd have to pay a hefty deposit, which would be returnable once I send the drives back, but at least it's an insurance policy for total loss. And, you know, my own stupid fault here, hitting the wrong button, not paying close enough attention, moving, multitasking in a way that I'm not great at, particularly when sleep deprived, but it just goes to show it can happen to anybody, so make sure you're backing up your data, preferably both locally and in the cloud.
So I think that's a really key thing to remember. It can happen to anybody. So once you decide, yes, you're going to back up, then you have to think about where you're going to store the backups. So there's a number of locations you can have it. An internal hard drive, if you have particularly a desktop computer, you could add in another external internal hard drive and back up your files to that. Typical sizes run around 2 to 20 terabytes. Cost per gigabyte, about 3 to 4 cents per gigabyte. Now, in addition to that, you can also do it to either an SD card or flash drive. And this can be a solution if you have a very modest amount of data that you want to back up. It is relatively small sizes and it is relatively expensive per gigabyte. External hard drive, typical sizes on that, about 1 to 20 terabytes at a cost of about 3 to 7 cents per gigabyte. I think the external hard drive is the best solution by far. It has a large capacity, low cost per gigabyte, and more importantly, I think you can separate your backup data from your computer. So there are some situations where you might have a disaster that will take out both your computer, as well as if your backup drive is plugged into your computer, it might take it out as well. So if you have a fire, it's not going to discriminate and leave your backup drive untouched. If you have a theft, the person is probably going to steal the backup drive as well. So that ability to separate your backup drive from your computer is a key benefit to being on an external hard drive. Think about what's on your computer. You have your operating system, whether it's Windows, Linux, Mac, whatever. Then you have all your programs, and then you have data. And I like to think of data as anything you create. So why backup? If your computer dies, well, you can buy a new one. There's lots of supplies of new computers. If your operating system or your programs are corrupted, you can reinstall them. You don't have the only copy of Windows. If your documents, pictures, videos, things like that, the data that you create, if that gets lost, nobody else has copies of that. So you have to take the responsibility to make sure that you can recover those. So if that's the case, why not just back up your data? After all, if you can replace Windows, you can replace the computer, you can replace your programs. Maybe just back up just your data files. And that can be a solution. Really is your data is what's critical. And backups will be small and they'll run faster, but because they don't include the operating system and the programs. But keep in mind that is a key thing. It does not back up the operating system, the programs, a lot of the customizations to your programs, things like that. And we'll come back to that aspect of how we preserve that data as well. So if you decide that you're just going to back up your data, simplest would be just a manual data backup, copy all your important files to some other location. But that's a tedious process. Anything that's tedious, anything that's manual, it's really easy to forget or put off. And it could be very easy to miss some important files. If you just back up your data, you have to think about whether you're backing up all your data. So I use Thunderbird for my email. And this is where Thunderbird actually stores my email. So it's under this PC, C drive, users, my user profile directory, app data, which happens to be a hidden folder, roaming Thunderbird profiles, some bizarre name, and then mail. And if I didn't think about the fact that Thunderbird is actually storing my email in that location, and I'm just backing up my data files that are important to me, I might actually forget to back up my mail, and then it could come back to bite me. Another example, this is my photo editor. and this is where it saves it. And again, it's under that hidden folder app data, roaming on one and so forth. Those are all the edits for all my tens of thousands of photos that I've actually edited. So if I didn't back that up and I lost my hard drive and I restored all my data that I had saved, I would all of a sudden discover that all of my edits on my photos for years and years and years would have been lost. Okay, so I talked about doing it as a manual process and how tedious things can be forgotten about. So what about making it an automated data backup? So in this case, what you do is you configure a program to do the backups for you, and then you just let the program do it, and the computer remembers to do it. There are some additional benefits that can come out of automated backups. One is real-time backup, where it doesn't wait for a specific time of day for a backup to run, but they are backed up as they're created or modified. And it can be either virtually instantaneous or on a scheduled basis that is quite frequent, every 10 minutes or every half hour or things like that. You can also get file versioning, where every time it saves a copy of a data file that you say you want protected, the previous version is actually saved as a different name, and then you can recover individual versions of files. So the way real-time backup works is that you're working on your computer and you save a document to your computer, and then you have a program that is monitoring for new or changed files, and then it'll automatically copy that file over to your backup drive. The way file versioning works is every time you save a file, a new unique copy gets saved. So here I'm working on budget.doc. It gets backed up to my backup drive, but it doesn't get backed up as just budget.doc. It'll get backed up as something like budget.doc with, in part of the file name, will be a date and timestamp that says when that was actually created. The next time I save the file, it'll back it up with a new version of that file and a new version every time you save it, so that you can go back and you can get that document as it existed in the past. So real-time backup and file versioning can be done with file history, which is built into Windows 10 and 11. It is somewhat lobotomized in Windows 11. We'll get back to that. All of the problems that Microsoft is creating for their users by changes in Windows 11. It does support almost real-time backup. We'll talk about that in a second. And it does support file versioning. It's all folder-based. You don't specify the files you want backed up. You specify folders, and everything within that folder will get backed up. So the defaults for file history is most of the folders underneath your profile, backing up new or changed files every hour. So it just looks for new and changed files once an hour, and keep versions forever, which means until the backup drive fills up. Customizations you can do. You can have add and remove folders. So as was asked before in the other presentation, if you had a backup or a portable drive connected to your computer, or you have a second drive connected to your computer and you have data files on it, you can point to those, get them added as well. And we'll talk about removal of folders as well. Backing up new or changed files, it's on discrete periods, and it can be anywhere from 10 minutes to daily. And when you keep the length of time that versions get kept for, it can be until space is required, after which it'll automatically clean up old versions to make room for new files, or discrete periods up to 2 years long. So I'm going to show you how it's done in Windows 10 because it's the most comprehensive means of doing it, and then we'll talk later on about the limitations that Windows 11 brings to the table. So you plug in an external disk drive that you want to store your backups on. It doesn't have to be dedicated to file history. It can be used for other things. So if you have one big drive, you don't necessarily need all that space for your file history, and you can actually use it for other things as well. So you go into the Settings app, you go to Update and Security Backup, and on the right-hand side, there's not an awful lot you can do. It says Backup using file history. The only thing you can do is add a drive. When you click on that, it'll bring up a list of external devices, or they don't have to be external. They have to be anything other than drive C. And it'll come up with the list of all of them, the size of it, and how much free space there is. And you can see here I chose local disk Z, which is a USB based drive, and it's basically a 1 terabyte file, drive, and it's free of all files as it stands right now. So I just click on that, and now if you do nothing else, it is automatically starting to work. Now, it won't immediately kick off. It usually takes about 15 minutes or so before it decides to do something, but you don't need to do anything else, and file history will actually be working with the default settings. I do recommend that you immediately come in and choose more options, because I think most people do want to choose something other than the defaults. So here's the screen that'll come up. And you'll see at the top it says backup my files and the default of every hour. And on the right hand side you can see what the different values are that you can actually choose, from every 10 minutes to daily. I would suggest that for most people, probably choosing something more frequent than every hour is probably a good thing to do. I actually set it to every 10 minutes on my computer, and what that means is that if I have a hard drive failure or some other kind of disaster, I should never lose more than 10 minutes worth of my work. Not too bad. In keeping the backups, forever is the default, or forever means really until the backup drive fills up. So I would suggest that most people would be better off with at least going until space is needed, in which case the file history will automatically clean up older versions of files to make room for new, or you can choose a specific period of time. Now, how do you choose? The important thing on here is just to monitor this over a period of time to see how much space is actually being taken up. Anytime you go into the settings for here, you'll see at the top it'll say size of backup. Now in this case it hadn't run yet, so it just says 0 bytes. When you come in later on, it'll actually show you how much space is being taken up. If you monitor that over time, that'll give you a bit of an idea about what a period might make appropriate choice for you. Especially if you're using that drive for other things, you don't necessarily want the space all taken up by file history files. So if, for example, you find after 3 months of use, it's only using 200 gigabytes worth of space, you might say, oh, okay, well, that's pretty good for me. Maybe I'll set it to every until 6 months of files is on there, and then clean up automatically based on that. That will leave me a lot of space left on the drive for use for other things. Until space is required, if you use it for nothing else, until space is needed is probably the better choice, because at that point it will just monitor that. It will automatically delete the files it needs to make space for new ones, and it'll give you the maximum amount of backups you can go back to, versions of old files. If you want to add a new folder, you just click on that. It'll bring up a File Explorer type interface where you can just choose another folder anywhere on your computer. Then you have the list of folders that are being backed up by file history. And you can go in and you can add a folder from that interface, or you can actually remove them. So you just click on it, and then you can choose to remove it if you decide you do not want to back up that. An example here is saved games folder, which is underneath everybody's profile. I've never seen any program that actually uses that. So you could leave it, or you could actually go in and remove it from the list. There is an option to exclude these folders, and the reason this exists is, say you have under your documents, which is being backed up, you have a junk folder underneath there, and you really don't care about that junk folder and anything that's in it. It's just scratch stuff. Because you're backing up the documents folder, it'll automatically back up that junk folder as well. And so if you don't want to back it up, you can go in and you can exclude that particular folder. If you decide you never want to use file history anymore, don't just unplug the drive and be done with it. After about a week, Windows will complain that it hasn't seen the backup drive in a while and urge you to plug it in. So if you want to stop using it, go into the settings and click on Stop Using Drive. It will not delete any of your existing backup files that are on that external drive. And they're actually browsable and fairly understandable in its structure. So you could actually leave the files there and be able to go back and get those old versions of the files, or you could get rid of that file history folder on that drive if you want to recover the space. Okay, how do you go and recover old versions of files? So if you go into File Explorer and you right-click on any particular file, you can go to the Properties, And on the Properties dialog box, there's a Previous Versions tab. And you can see there's a whole bunch of previous versions of this particular file that I was working on. So I can just go to any version that I want. I can click on the Restore, or I can Restore to. The difference between those two is that if you click on Restore, it will overwrite the existing file that you have in that location with that backup version. If you want to preserve that, maybe you want to compare the two files and see, there's unique data in both of them, then you can do a Restore to. It'll restore that older version to a different location, and then you can reconcile the differences between those two files, decide what you want to keep. What if you have a deleted file? Okay, so if we look up back on this one here, and you see I right-clicked on that file, and I go to Properties and so forth. What if I've deleted a file? So I have nothing to right-click on. So let's imagine I have this file to be deleted.txt file, and I accidentally delete it. So what I do is I go to in File Explorer, I go to the folder where the file used to exist. And then on the Home tab, I click on History, and it'll bring up this sort of VCR type control where I can rewind to a previous version of when the backup actually ran or file history actually ran until I find the file. So I go in, it'll always show you the most recent run of file history, and I don't see my file there. And I just keep going back, and in this case I got back to 3 of 6, and all of a sudden there's the file. And then I can click on Restore. Note that there's no Restore to. You're not going to overwrite anything because you deleted the file, so there's no danger of data loss by just doing a restore. It'll bring that file back to its current location. In particular, if you have Keep My Backups Forever, eventually that backup drive is going to fill up. So if it does fill up, you have to do a cleanup, and you'll have to do that manually. So to do that, you go into the settings and you go to Advanced Settings, and then there'll be an option in the Advanced Settings dialog box called Cleanup Versions. When you do that, it'll come up with another one where you can choose period of time where any backup versions of files older than a particular period of time will be removed. Now, file history will never, if you've only got one version of a file, even if it is older than that period, it will not delete it. But if there are multiple versions, then it will delete the versions older than the period that you specify. Now let's get to some of the bad news. File history in Windows 11. So Microsoft actually removed file history from the Settings app. The only way to configure file history now is through Control Panel. File history in Control Panel has some limitations in the way it works. It will only back up desktop, contacts, favorites, and libraries. And the default libraries are documents, pictures, music, and videos. You can't add new folders. Okay, so that's one limitation. But a workaround for that is because it's backing up libraries, you can add folders to either an existing library, or you can create a brand new library and then add folders to that other library. And the PDF file you can download of my presentation talks about that more length on how to create libraries, how to add folders to libraries to get this workaround working for you. Problem number 2. The ribbon was removed from File Explorer. I said when you wanted to recover a deleted file, you had to go to the ribbon. Well, ribbon no longer exists in File Explorer. And so the workaround for that is if you go to the Settings app, and you just type in the search box file history, as you see there, then the first option you'll see is restore your files with file history. So just click on that, and then you will get that File Explorer or the VCR-like control where you can actually go and find your file that you want to be recovered. In this case, just go find the file, and it tells me the date and time the backup ran, so it'll give me an idea of the version that I want of that particular file, and then select the file. Restore button, and I'm good. Problem number 3. Microsoft actually had to go to some work to remove file history from the Settings app. Why would they actually do that? I think that the only reason is that they expect to remove file history completely in the future. Now, I might be slightly wrong on that. I know that Microsoft really wants you to use OneDrive in order to back up all your files. So it might be just that, but I wouldn't be surprised at all if they want to remove file history completely at some point in the future. It hasn't been deprecated yet, and I haven't read anything official from Microsoft saying that they intend to. But because they went to so much work to actually remove file history from settings, it wouldn't surprise me. So the workaround for that, I think it's come to look for time to come a replacement for file history to do both those functions, real-time backup as well as file versioning. And the free and open source free file sync looks really good. It is free. It is a very powerful file synchronization program, and it can do everything the file history, except it doesn't integrate in with the file explorer, so that you can't just right click on a file and say you want a previous version. It's a more manual process in order to get your files back if you need them. Okay, cloud backup. So everybody, if they just think for a few seconds, what is your definition of the cloud? And personally, I think that the best way to define the cloud is someone else's computer. And that has all kinds of implications about it. So cloud backup can be a solution. Again, you're only typically backing up your data files, but it is your data files that are critical. And it'll work as long as you have enough cloud storage for all your important files. Keep in mind it doesn't back up your operating system or your programs. Some of the benefits you get with cloud backup, offsite automatically, so that gives you protection against those somewhat rarer dangers such as fire, theft, and so forth. You can access your backup files from anywhere in the world. So kind of nice that you can just log into any computer anywhere. As long as it's got an internet connection, you can access all of your files that are backed up to the cloud. You can, with some solutions, with most solutions nowadays, you can get synchronization between multiple computers, which can be a problem if you have a corrupted file. It'll happily synchronize that corrupted file with all of your computers. And you can get real-time backup and file sharing with other people, which can be very, very handy. Cloud backup can work, but what if they go out of business? Now, I don't expect that Microsoft is going to go out of business anytime soon, or Google, but a lot of the other cloud providers, I don't know what their business model is. I don't know if I could wake up tomorrow morning, find that they've gone out of business and all my files on their backup solution are no longer accessible. The mitigation, nothing unique gets stored in the cloud. Okay? So if it's an important file, make sure that that's not the only place that it's stored. If they go out of business, I just sign up with a new cloud provider, copy all my files to the new cloud provider, and I'm safe again. What if they get hacked? Now, I think that Microsoft and Google and the rest, they can probably do security much better than I can, but it's not to say it isn't a problem. Now, one thing is, a lot of these companies, they are a big target. So the hackers know that if they can break into Google Drive or OneDrive from Microsoft, they'll have a gold mine of the files belonging to hundreds of millions or billions of people. But even beyond that, here was an example in February 2020 where Google admitted to the fact that over a 4-day period, there were Google Photos, videos that were stored in Google Photos were accidentally exported to unrelated users' archives. That would not be a really nice thing to find out that some of my videos got shared with other people without my consent. So what's the mitigation for that? Encrypt sensitive data. If it's going to be stored in the cloud somewhere, it's outside of your control, and therefore it could be leaked somehow or hacked. And so therefore make sure that you encrypt anything that is sensitive so that even if somebody gets it, there's no harm, no foul. Beyond the contents of this presentation to talk about encryption, but there are lots of solutions for that. This was going back a little bit, but a while ago I was on cable modem and I had 5 megabit per second upload speed, 30 megabit per second down, and I had a cap of 300 gigabytes per month. So to back up 1 terabyte worth of data would take 20 days. I could restore that 1 terabyte in only 3.5 days because the download speed was much better. But I'd blow my monthly cap and I would be charged an awful lot of extra money from my internet service provider. So the solution for that is don't back up everything. So just back up your important files. But what about the other files? Just because they're not deemed to be your critical files and so forth doesn't mean they're unimportant. They're just not critical. So some of the cloud backup providers, this was in the previous presentation as well, 15 gigabytes for free on Google Drive. Currently I'm using actually about 10 gigabytes, and I have all of what I consider to be very important files are stored within that 10 gigabytes. You can get additional space. There are a lot of other ones out there. And some of them can be quite quite large. Terabox will actually give you a terabyte of space for free. I think Ice Drive also will give you a terabyte of space for free. There are some limitations in how you use the particular service, but you can get a lot of space for free. So how do I use it? So I can have files automatically synchronized between multiple computers. I give a lot of presentations like this, a lot of them in person at different locations. And so I have all of my presentation files are synchronized up to the cloud automatically. If I was to make a change while I'm out and about at some other location to one of my presentation files and I save it, and by the time I get home, the updated file has already been synchronized down. So it keeps those files the same on all my devices, which can be really, really nice. I can have important files available, from anywhere in the world. So in here, I have a Word document and a picture of my passport. Now, passport is sensitive information, so it's stored as an encrypted JPEG file, and therefore I can access it from anywhere as long as I have the ability to decrypt it at that location. I also use it when I'm traveling. So plane reservations, and if I'm taking a cruise, I might have the itinerary on there and the deck plans and the restaurant meals, their menus, excursions, things like that. I might have car reservations, hotel reservations, all in the cloud so that I can access all that information no matter where I am, even if the laptop that I carry with me dies on me. As long as I can get access to another computer, I can get access to all that information. I can share files with others. If I come back from a trip and I have hundreds of photos and they're all about 20 or 30 megabytes each, I wouldn't have friends very much longer if I tried emailing all these to them, just that they might be interested. So instead, I can just share them in the cloud, and then I can either have it as a one-way synchronization where people can read the file, but they can't modify it, or I can set up two-way synchronization. So I can have it that any important files that I want collaborative work done on, I can allow other people to actually modify those files as well, and then we can work on it collaboratively. There are commercial cloud backup providers. There's a lot of different ones out there, Backblaze, Carbonite, iDrive, and so forth. They know the free versions exist, and so they typically will give you more than just raw storage. So things like automated backup using a shipped drive, as Hudson Henry pointed out, where not only can you do your initial backup, which might be a terabyte of files or something like that, you could actually have them ship you drives, you put your files on it, ship them back. Or you can have it where you have a disaster recovery where you're getting your files back from them. If there's a lot of data, you can get them to put them onto drives, ship them to you, and then you return the drives to them. Most of them seem to want about $70 to $100 US per year. Take a look at the terms and conditions. They vary quite widely. Some of them will allow you to have unlimited devices with a limited space, or they might have unlimited space on a single device, or things like that. So take a look at the terms and conditions, and if you are going onto the commercial backup solution, pick the one that matches the way that you want it to work. So let's go back to say, why not just back up all our data? So we're not going to worry about our programs or our operating system. We're just going to back up our data to either external or internal hard drives, flash drives, or to the cloud. What happens if we have a disaster? So we have hard drive failure. We have to replace the hard drive, not a problem. Then we have to reinstall Windows or whatever your operating system is. We have to reinstall all the programs. And then finally, you can get around to recovering all your data files from the backup. Keep in mind that you might have lost customizations to your programs. You might you might spend days getting Windows reinstalled, getting all your programs installed? Do you know where your activation keys are for all your programs? Things like that. It can be a really tedious process to get back into operation. And then don't forget, did you actually back up all your data? So again, I would hate to lose all of my photo edits just because I didn't back up the catalog in my photo editor. So to battle this, what we do is we back up everything using what is known as imaging. Okay, note at the bottom, there's additional slides at the end of the PDF file that talk about locking down external storages to a specific drive letter. This was alluded to in the previous presentation because if you, or in the question and answer afterwards, if you are plugging and unplugging these drives onto your computer, they can change drive letters. If you have a backup program that is designed to look for the backup drive to be on drive D or E or F or whatever, and then one day it changes drive letter, that can cause problems. So what is a disk image? So it's a snapshot of everything that's on that computer. So the operating system, the programs, and the data, customizations, absolutely everything, all of it gets copied to preferably an external hard drive, in usually a single file that only the backup program actually understands. So now if we have to do a data recovery or disaster recovery with imaging, so we have the hard drive failure, we still have to replace the hard drive, but then we can boot from a flash drive or a bootable DVD that the backup program allows you to create. So it'll have an operating system on it as well as the backup program. So you boot with that, you run the recovery program, and then a couple of hours later, everything goes back to the state it was in when the backup actually ran last. Really kind of nice. So you get back your operating system, your programs, along with their customizations and everything, and all your data files. So there are free options for imaging. I wrote an article a number of years ago, finding a backup program. I was using one program at the time, it was a commercial program, and I was getting unhappy with the way that they were messing around with the user interface. And so I decided to go looking for a new backup program. So I looked specifically for a free option. And I came across 4. And so Ease-S-To-Do Backup, AME Backupper, and Paragon Backup and Recover, those are all still currently available in formats that I find to be very usable. I also did a review. In that review, I also covered Macrium Reflect, and there is no longer a free version of Macrium Reflect available. For a period of time, they had a version that was available that was a little bit lobotomized. It didn't allow you to do incremental backups, but it looks like they've totally pulled the free version of Macrium Reflect now. So if you're interested, I talk in that article about what was important to me on a backup, and all 3 of those programs are quite effective backup programs, and any one of them might be useful for you. You have to decide what features you need in the backup software. All of them are very capable backup programs. So imaging software, you can image the entire computer, so every device that's within it. You can do full or incrementals, so full backups, everything that's there. And then incrementals will only back up the changes since the last time the backup ran, which are typically much, much smaller. You can schedule it, so it runs in, when you're not using the computer. You can run any of these while you're using the computer, and I find that the overhead and the processing, it isn't all that heavy duty. And so you can run it. If you don't like to leave your computer on overnight, running it in the middle of the night, you can actually run it during the day while you're using your computer if that suits your needs. You can do disaster recovery, which will recover everything using either that bootable flash drive or the DVD that the program allows you to create. Or you can do file and folder recovery. So even though it's an image of your entire computer, you can actually dig down into it to pick out individual files or folders that you want to restore. So I'm going to show you some examples here of using Ease-S-To-Do Backup, and don't try and memorize this process. My whole aim here is to show you how simple this process is. All of these programs are very, very similar in the way that they do it. So you add a backup. In this case here, I can click to rename the backup job to something that makes sense to me. If I have multiple backup jobs, I can specify what they are actually used for, set what I want to back up. In this case, I want to back up a disk or multiple disks. And then it brings up the lists of the disks that are on your computer, and you can put check marks either on the entire disk or the individual partitions. I usually just back up every internal disk that I have connected to my computer, just everything that's on it. Click on OK. Then you specify where you want your backups to be stored. In this case, I'm going to go to on the drive Z, and I just click on local drive. I point to drive Z. I point to a particular folder on there, and it will back up my, all my backups will go in under that location. Click on OK. Under the options, you can go in, you can set various things like scheduling and whether you want it to be incremental backups or full backups, whether you want them encrypted, all kinds of things like that. The defaults are pretty good, but it's not a bad idea to browse around in there to see if there's something that can be optimized better for how you want backups to be done. There's where you can define a schedule, and you can see it's very, very flexible in how often you want that to be run, what time of day you want it to be run, what days of the week, whether you want to run multiple times a day, all the rest of it. And then you just click on Start the Backup, and that's it. It'll work for you. So if you want to do a recovery, you just go back into the program, you select the backup job in the left-hand panel where you want to recover files from. You click on Recover, and then you can do either disk or partition, which will, as it alludes to, it'll just restore everything that is in that drive or that partition, wiping out anything that is currently there. Or you can go into file mode if you want to recover just files and folders without disturbing everything else that's on your computer. And you end up with a File Explorer type interface where you can just drill down. You can say what files and folders you want recovered, click on the Recover button, and it'll just recover those. If you have multiple full or incremental backups, you can actually pick out the date or date and time that the backup actually ran so you can find the correct file. The emergency disk creation, again, all of these programs, they will allow you to create this specific bootable device so that you can get to your backups in a disaster recovery situation. So with Ease Us to Do Backup, you go to Tools, Create Emergency Disk, and then you create, say where you wanted to create it. It could be either flash drive or a DVD. Be really careful about creating this flash drive or the DVD. They will overwrite everything that is on that particular device and make it bootable, add the operating system on it and the recovery program. So it will happily do that if you specify a plugged in external drive that has data on it. Now, it will identify them all by drive letter and by size and things like that. But if you're at all nervous, what I suggest is unplug all of the external devices that you have on your computer, then plug in just that one flash drive you want to use for recovery, and then it can't pick the wrong thing. There's an awful lot more that is in the help files. The help files are actually really, really well done in all of these programs in my experience. So download the PDF file if it doesn't get installed as part of the program itself, and it'll give information on strategies for backup, exactly how all the different options work, and so forth. Quite comprehensive, quite useful. So there are some problems with imaging. So a month of my backups, this goes back a little bit, I'm up to about 1.4 terabytes now, but a month of my backups at that time was a full backup, 713 gigabytes, but 30 days worth of incrementals were only 123 gigabytes total. So that meant that for about a month's worth of backups, it only took me 836 gigabytes of space on the backup drive. So mitigation for that, well, first off, external hard drives are pretty inexpensive. You can get a 4 terabyte drive for 115 or so, and that's Canadian dollars. So under $100 US, you can probably find external hard drive at a 4 terabyte. So even if you did, if you were in the situation that I was in, even if you did backups every day, you could have about 4 months worth of backups that you go back and recover to the day from any of that period. One of the mitigations is that incremental backups are relatively small. Full backup images can take hours. So mitigations, incrementals, back up really quickly. On my system, I run it every night in the middle of the night, and the incremental backups take usually under 5 minutes. You can schedule backups to run unattended, so you don't really care. how long it takes. So even when I roll over my backups once a month, the next time the backup runs, it has to run a full backup. And so what if it takes 4 hours? It's doing it at 1 o'clock in the morning. I don't care. I think more than one solution is the best approach. So backing up just your data is not a bad idea. So using file history or free file sync, you'll get that near real-time backup as you make changes to files or as you add new files to your system. And then with that versioning, you can get really long recovery periods. So if I have a particular file that I have, say of whatever budget information or something like that, and it's periodically getting updated, and I decide, well, I really had some information in this file last year or 2 years ago or whatever, I may be able to go in and get that version of the file that still had that information in it. Cloud backup is really good too. So some of the benefits it brings: access to your files from any computer, anywhere in the world, as long as there's an internet connection. Offsite backup, something I should have added to this slide. So if I have a fire or a theft in my house, these are in another location, I can share files with other people very easily, and they can access it directly just using a URL that I give them. And then the ability to synchronize all my important files between all of my devices is really handy, as well as getting that real-time backup so that as I change files, I can have it automatically backed up to the cloud as well. Backing up everything using imaging, that is really useful. So it gives you that disaster recovery of the entire computer, which the other two solutions don't give me. So they didn't back up my copy of Windows, my programs, all my configuration information, all my folders that some program decided to squirrel away important data in some unknown location to me. And it does allow you to do that recovery of individual files and folders, that you don't have to do it as a disaster recovery where you're bringing back everything, overwriting all your current information. I've never used Apple devices, so I only speak to this in terms of what I have been told. But Apple Mac OS users, I think, have a wonderful solution called Time Machine. And everybody I've talked to who has an Apple device, they just shake their head when I tell them what I do in terms of coming up with a backup solution for a Windows machine. If you plug in an external drive into an Apple device, it'll automatically come up and tell you or ask you, do you want to use this for Time Machine? And if you say yes, you're done. It'll automatically back up all your changes for the last 24 hours, hourly. It'll do daily for the last month, weekly for all previous months, and then it'll automatically clean up space to make room for new files. And if you have even a relatively ancient version of OS X, you can actually start your computer with a Time Machine disk. So if you have a meltdown on your computer, you buy a brand new Mac, you plug in your Time Machine drive, and it'll automatically ask you, oh, do you want me to recover all of your information from this Time Machine backup? Really, really sweet. Offsite backups are very important. It'll mitigate some of those rarer dangers. So fire, theft in particular, they can be, they happen. It's not unheard of that we have things like that happen, but they're not all that often things like that actually happen. File encrypting malware, if you get hit with that, it could happily encrypt if you have local backups that are being run every night, you have the drive plugged into your computer every night. Well, if you have file encrypting malware, it might go in and encrypt your backup files. So because it's not as likely to happen, I think it can be less frequent than your regular backups. How often you back up, you really have to think about what makes sense to you. I decided for me that I do have my image backup is running once a day so that I will never lose more than a day worth of work on my computer, no matter what happens. Some people, they might not need it as frequent. If my girlfriend, she backs up her computer every week. I've warned her about what the ramifications are of choosing that, and she's happy with that solution. If you're running a business, I don't think you want to be running a business where you don't have at least daily backups. Fastest way to go out of business is to lose a week's worth of work or more. So because this is something that is going to be a rarer danger, I don't worry about backing it up as often. I do about once a month an offsite backup with the full realization that if I do have a disaster like a fire or theft, I might lose up to a month's worth of work. And I think that for my usage, it's probably okay. Where do you store that offsite backup disk? Uh, if you're working, your desk drawer at work, a friend's house, as long as you make sure that the friend isn't next door, where, if a tornado comes through, it could take out your house, it could take out your friend's house. So somewhere across town might be a good idea for location for that. Some people have said they store it into a safety deposit box at the bank. That can be done. It's a little bit awkward though, and so you're less likely to actually do it. And if you ever need the information and it's a Friday night and you have to wait until Monday morning to get your backups, not so convenient. Because it's outside of your control, it's a good idea to encrypt the information on that drive. So some external drives, in particular Western Digital drives, seem to be really big on this. They include software on it that does full disk encryption. It's not enabled by default. You have to run a program, and then once you run it and you give it a password, then every time you plug that drive into a computer, you actually have to provide the password before you can access any of the information on it. If you don't have that, then most imaging software does include an option to encrypt the backup files themselves. Now, the password is not required in order to encrypt it, so you can run the backup anytime without any problem. It's just if you go in to recover any information off of it, you end up having to supply the password before you can actually recover any files. One thing of note, file history does not really allow you to do offsite backup. It expects to be connected to your computer all the time, and it's not easy to have multiple copies of file history on a computer. Can be done if you really, really want to, but it's not easily done, and it's easy to get the program confused. How many backups do you need? I think that for anything that is important data, it should be in at least 3 places. So the main one is on your computer, your working files. A local backup using either file history or image backups, that's a good thing to back up as a secondary location. It'll be frequent backups, and it gives you protection from things like deletion, disk failures, and things like that. And then you want offsite backup, and that could be either cloud or image backups that get stored somewhere else, and that gives you protection from those rarer dangers, fire, theft, electrical surges, things like that. So think about your needs when it comes to backup. Your needs are going to be different than my needs are, and that's fine. You have to think about what's important to you, what you can do without, and what is really important that if you have a disaster or an overwritten file, how are you going to get that data back? Is it important that you get that data back? Choose a solution that mitigates the dangers that you identify in your particular circumstances. Test your backup processes. We don't back up for backup's sake. We back up so we can recover. So verify that the files can be recovered. If you're using image backup solutions, create that emergency recovery disk or the flash drive. If there's nothing unique about it, it can actually be produced on any computer by just downloading the program, and they're all free, the versions of the program that I talked about, and you can create that recovery disk or the flash drive. The reason why you want to make sure you do it in the first place is so that you can actually test whether you can actually boot your computer using that flash drive. And once you've booted from the recovery, will the backup program run, and can you access your recovery drive or your backup drive while you're booted from that flash drive? I had a situation early in the days of my computing when I had a problem with a laptop computer. It had to go back for repair. I actually unplugged opened it up. I checked the hard drive, and I verified that the problem of this computer not booting was not with the drive. The drive was fine. So when I sent it back, I said, the drive is fine. Please don't wipe any of the data off of it, but look for the solution somewhere else. I had a backup, but I just decided, well, I don't want to actually go to the work of trying to recover all my information if I don't have to. So when I got the computer back, sure enough, it was fixed. They had replaced the motherboard on the computer, and they had wiped the hard drive and replaced it with a factory fresh image. So I said, okay, well, it's tedious, but let me boot from my recovery media and plug in my external hard drive where all my backups were stored. And lo and behold, the backup program could not see the external drive that I had plugged in. There was something about the USB chipset on that particular computer that the backup drive didn't recognize, or the bootable flash drive didn't recognize that USB drive. I sweated bullets for a little while until I discovered that in actual fact, I could do a recovery across the network. And so I plugged the external drive with my backups on into my son's computer and then accessed it across the network, and I was able to recover everything. But it's really, really important to test those backups. Periodically test all of your different backups. Make sure that you can get back a file or a folder. Just try to connect to your cloud solution. Copy down a file that you've got backed up there. If you're using file history, try recovering a file from your file history and make sure that you can do it before you actually need it. A backup that's untested is not a backup. So I think there's just three really, really important strategies that everybody needs to consider. The first is backup. Second is backup. And if anybody can't guess, the third one is backup. Really, really important that you back up all your information so that you don't lose critical data or something that's important to you. Now I'm going to give a quick advert for the Ottawa PCUG group, and then I'll open it up for questions. So our motto, users helping users, we've been doing this for about 43 years. Our main meeting is on the second Wednesday of the month at 7:30 p.m. and we'll have in a speaker on a particular topic. Other Wednesday evenings, we have Q&A sessions, which are really free-form type things, and we welcome guests at any time at any of our meetings. You can come as often as you want, no problem at all. We do have 2 member-only services, and only 2 member-only services. So we have a discussion forum online, and we have one-on-one remote assistance where we can team you up with somebody who thinks they might be able to solve your problem, and they can connect to your computer over Zoom or Microsoft Quick Assist, and then you can work together to solve your particular problem. And if you decide you do want to join, our annual membership fee is $20, but if you join before the end of this month, you'll get 2 years for the price of 1. And we do have a number of members of the APCUG member groups that are a member. If you are already a member, please don't renew your membership. For all our existing members in good standing, membership is going to be extended for an additional fee, an additional year for free as of the end of this month. Some of the additional information that's in the PDF file that you can download that I gave you the URL for, locking down that external drive to a single drive letter so it doesn't change every time you plug it into your computer, using file history in Windows 11 with those workarounds for those issues that Microsoft caused, and then using free file sync as a replacement for file history. I have a very comprehensive amount of slides on how you can actually replace all of the functionality from file history using free file sync. And that's it. So with that, I will stop my share and see if there are any questions.
Outstanding presentation as usual.
Yay.
Thank you so much. And I use iDrive out of Calabasas, California, and it does image backups and all good kinds of stuff, but it does not like Linux for some reason. And John Kennedy tried it for a while and battled with them. And many of the APCUG as an association does not recommend anything, but many of the members use iCloud, iDrive. I've used it for over 10 years through 3 different computers when you look at it, a couple of laptops and this kind of thing. And it is $100 a year. And they always have sales. So right now it's $70 for the first year. You can do an image backup in the whole 9 yards. And one of my members has it, and he wondered, he gave him a call one day and said, what happens if we have an earthquake? And the person he was talking to said, Well, we have your data in 3 different states, so don't worry about it. So that was good to know. Thank you for the smile, Yomar. Appreciate that. And a lot of people in APCUG are using the Proton products out of, I believe, Switzerland, and their P Cloud is 2 TB, and I have 5 TB for $100. And P Cloud is 2 TB, regularly $600 forever, your lifetime, and they're having a sale, and it's $400.
I
And
will point out that when Proton says lifetime for $600, that's their lifetime as well as your lifetime.
right. And this is their, like I say, many APCUG people have gone to using their email, their backups, their password, the whole 9 yards. So again, APCUG doesn't recommend anything, but the members certainly share their experiences. And John gives an excellent presentation on free file sync if you would like to have him give one at your group meeting. He is giving 2 within this week and next week. So think about that. My questions are, hold on. Please help me. Okay. What is the difference between clone and image? They seem to be pretty much the same thing.
Yeah, I think they pretty much are. Cloning was a term that used to be used, and it seems to have gone more to just calling it imaging since then. Anybody feel free to correct me if I'm wrong on that. But as my understanding is they are identical.
Tim, would you like to speak up about that? And hold on. John stepped away for a minute. So,
No, I didn't. I said I was back.
You're back. Okay.
So you want me to let Tim speak?
Yeah, Tim K. Tim from
let's
Chicago.
see. There we go. My Tim.
You're Tim. Yes.
Offhand, a clone. You are taking your internal drive on a computer and you are creating a byte for byte exact image to another drive, usually connected through your USB port to an external drive. The target drive has to be equal to or greater in capacity than the internal drive. But it is bootable and usable right away. You could take the 2 drives and swap them in the machines, and your system looks and works identically. An image is like taking a photograph with your smartphone or a DSLR, and it will be a compressed version, and therefore when the image goes onto your external drive, it takes up less space. It's not directly bootable. However, it can be restored in case you either increase the size of your internal drive or your internal drive died, you had to replace it, and it's at least as big or bigger than the original drive was, and you can restore that image as of the day it was made. Same with a clone. The day it was made is what you have on a clone.
Yeah,
So
yeah, good point on that because what it really amounts to is the clone. You're automatically creating that restored version sort of thing. It's really the equivalent of doing an image backup and then restoring the image.
yes.
Yeah.
And
That's a good way to look at it.
Difference between the two. And a lot of people, like you were stating there, confuse cloning as a backup. It is one copy of your drive that does not constitute a backup.
True. Yep. Yeah. Good way of looking at it.
Thank you. And I do have another comment about me. I have always used an SSD drive for my external backup. And the one that I have now, a little pop-up said, "Sorry, Judy, there's something wrong with your external hard drive. It needs to be fixed." So I fixed it. And a couple, 3 weeks later, it popped up again with the same message. And with that, I got smart and thought, well, really, Talor, you do need to get a new one. Two of my members back up to the old-fashioned ready platter hard drives. And independently, they did not talk to each other. They had had problems with SSD drives dying. So do check your SSD drives with Hard Drive Sentinel that we did get a discount for. I'll be sending it out to everybody soon. And so I went with a Seagate 2 terabyte platter drive for $99 from Best Buy. It did take a while to get everything all together, but I'm giving that a go just for grins. John asks, when file history is cleaning up old files from the backup drive, what logic does it use? Does it keep a certain number of copies of each file?
Has Microsoft ever explained their logic to you? Because they haven't explained their logic to me. But I think what is happening is it will back up copies of those files every time you change them. So if you have one file that has been changed 1,000 times within, say you have it keeping at least 2 years worth of files, you'll have 1,000 copies of that file. If you have a copy of a file that it has never changed, it will have one copy of that particular file. When it's doing cleanup, it will go in and it will look at, you're saying delete all of the versions that are older than a particular point in time. And so it will do that, all of the versions of the files that are older than that particular time, with the exception that it will never delete it if you've only got one copy and that one copy is older than the period you specify. It will keep that one copy. So it'll never wipe out that. Other than that, every version of every file that is older than the period you specify will be deleted.
Carol would like to know if a file exceeds the time period set for keep my backups. Do just previous versions get deleted, or will all instances of the file be deleted?
All instances of that file, again, with the exception that you only have one copy of it, it will not delete that one copy. Other than that, all the versions that are older than the time you specify.
Outstanding. Thank you. I only keep one version of everything. If I want a different version of a document, I make it a -1. David, you are on.
Okay, I came up with an idea after your presentation last week when talking about making a rescue disk. And what I did is I took a fresh external hard drive, and when I created the rescue disk, I had to create it to that disk. And then I did the backups to that disk also.
Yep.
And then I tried rebooting the computer to that disk. It fired up, the backup program ran, and it would allow me to run it from there.
Yep.
So you don't need to worry about trying to find your CD or your SD card or your USB stick with the rescue file on it. It's right on the backup drive.
That's a really good solution. And in particular, I use that on one of my laptops because most flash drives, or the flash drives I had at the time, I only had USB Type A. And my backup drive had USB Type A. And the laptop had one USB Type A. So I was in the position where if I plugged in my bootable flash drive, booted the computer, and then tried to access my backup drive, I had nowhere to plug it into. And I thought about that, and that's the solution that I came up with as well, is I took a new external hard drive, USB Type A, made it the bootable drive, added a partition. Like I partitioned the drive so that was very small, the bootable partition, and then I had another partition where I just copied my backup files to, and then I was able to access it from the one device. Curious, it's very interesting that you came up with the exact same solution that really makes sense,
And
but it
I
takes some
hadn't
work.
really heard about it before either.
Yeah, it's good.
Outstanding, you guys. Steve Parker. Oh, and Steve Parker says there are 44 terabyte external hard drives available, but I would like to know how much those cost, okay?
Well, you couldn't buy them. You have to
Well,
be
I
an
know that, but
enterprise to
still.
get them now. Yeah. Well, the technology of it is incredible. But anyway, what I wanted to ask was, I've been using the file history for years. And a week or so ago, it started saying, put a different drive in to continue using it. Well, it reached 0 bytes free. So I thought, okay, I'll use the program Everything to find the duplicate files that it's got in there that it's made different versions of that are still exactly the same file. So I found, I don't know, 100 gigs or so, deleted them all, the ones I didn't need. Was okay until now it's reached 0 bytes free again. What's the best way of preventing it from doing that?
There's a couple of approaches you could take. The most successful one, you probably have it set to keep files forever. So that is where, yeah, if it gets to 0 bytes, it'll just say you got to do something to solve my problem. You could then go into the settings and say, okay, now within the configuration, you could say delete versions older than 2 years or whatever. Or you could change your configuration for file history so that it is only keeping files for 1 year or 3 months or 6 months or something that will keep it under better control. And again, if you go into the settings for file history, you'll see at the top where it will tell you how much space is available and how big your backups are. If you have other things that are being stored on that drive, you could move them to a different location as well. So there's a number of strategies you can take, but by and large, I would say get off of the configuration option that says keep files forever.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Hey, Gary, you're on.
Yes. I'm curious why you say that a clone is not uh, a backup when you can restore a file a lot easier, it seems like, and you can still restore all the files if you need to. Uh, why is it not considered a backup?
If you unplug that drive and set it on the shelf or something like that, sure, it's a backup. It's a relatively expensive way of going about doing a backup because every time you clone the drive, you basically have to take that drive and set it aside if you want to preserve it as a backup.
Well, yeah, that's really what I do. I mean, I've been doing imaging with the Macrium, but the clone thing seems to be easier way to find a file and just copy it back because I do it once a month or whatever, and I set it on the side, yeah, and then I
Yeah.
plug it in to do a backup. But
Yeah.
I always thought that's still a backup.
It is a backup. It's just that most people don't want to go to that expense of spending the money on another drive and for every time they want to run a backup. If all you want ever is one backup of everything, then sure, it's a solution. It is a backup of your files for sure.
But don't you still have the same drive for an image? You plug it in and set it to the side, or you're saying you have it running all the time?
I have it running all the time. Like I have
Oh,
my
okay.
internal storage on my computer constitutes about 3 terabytes. I have a 14 terabyte external hard drive that I use for backups. And so it will run backups for about 3 months now,
Hmm.
where I can recover to the day. So it's as if I had, 150 hard drives that I cloned, because I can go back to those individual dates and get particular files back.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate it.
Okay.
Bob.
Bob's coming on. My chat is disabled. I don't know how to enable it. Can I ask a question?
John will take care of that.
Oh, you told me to turn it off.
No,
Go
no,
ahead and ask it.
no. He's up at the top.
He's already talking.
I'm talking. If I can be heard, Chris,
Yep.
for an idiot, can you give in simple steps what order one ought to do all the wonderful things that you said to do? Imaging, file backup, syncing, and all of that. And number 1, 2, 3.
I do them all.
What order?
Well, I mean, they're always running on my computer. So my image backup is running every morning, 1 o'clock in the morning. I have file history running on my computer all the time. I have Google Drive is my cloud solution, and so it is running all the time.
Okay,
So
let's say this, Chris, for a new person who's never done anything before, what's the first thing he should do?
Okay, I think imaging is the most comprehensive solution, and it'll allow you to recover from just about everything. So that gives you your total disaster recovery, things like that. Sorry, my phone is ringing here. Let's see if I can turn these off. I think that is probably the most critical one. However, having said that, very quickly you should start thinking about the fact that that does not mitigate some of the dangers, such as fire, theft, and things like that. So then I would look at adding on either file history or cloud backup. Both of them work, very similarly and provide protection from, again, slightly different things. But I would look at both those solutions, whether you do one or the other first, whichever you think is the most important. If the most important is to mitigate against fire and things like that, then probably the next thing you want to do is a cloud storage backup, because that'll mitigate against that particular danger. If you, think about what it is, the dangers that you're trying to mitigate. I would start with imaging, and then I would very quickly either go to the file history type backup or cloud backup, and I'd probably do both. I recommend doing both.
And where and when do I do the emergency reboot or whatever that is, where I put it on
that is when you install your imaging software. It will allow you to create that, because that is required in order to do that disaster recovery using imaging backup. And it's part of the process. They will actually prompt you to do that. So when you install something like Ease Us to do backup, at the end of the installation, they'll say, oh, by the way, you should create this emergency recovery disk. And if you've got a spare flash drive kicking around, do it right then. Otherwise, at the first convenient time, go into the imaging software, and it'll allow you to create that emergency recovery disk.
How large does the flash drive need to be?
I think now you're talking about 16 gigs.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Okay, let's try Bob again, whose hand is raised.
Can you hear me now?
Yes,
we can hear you now.
Absolutely.
I'm on my iPad, which I hardly ever use for this, and the controls are all different, so I got confused.
That's okay.
Anyway, my simple question is, I saw your presentation last March. I took the backup pledge. Thank you very much. And I bought 2 4-terabyte external hard drives, not SSDs, but the old kind. And I started file history, and I did the whole thing onto one of those disks. The question is, so I want to put one of those, put it offsite, but how do you tell it to make another copy of the same thing?
File history is really not designed to work in that manner. It's designed to have just a single installation of it, a single external hard drive that is always connected to your computer. If you try to use it where you would take that file history drive, put it off-site, and then just plug in another drive, you're probably going to end up with file history getting very confused.
It can't be more confused than I am, but thank you very much.
Okay. Email me if you have more questions about that, and I'd be happy to point out exactly why it is that sort of thing will happen. So my email address is in the chat. By all means, email me, and I can fill you in with more details about how, if you really want to do that, the steps I would do to actually have that work. And it is doable. It's just that probably not as convenient as most people would think.
Okay, so if you wanted to have two copies, two physical, hard drive copies, or external hard drive copies, in addition to the cloud, you're always saying we should have three backups. So, one is it would be the file history on that's 4 terabyte external hard drive.
Yeah,
and
I mean,
and what's the other one?
well, that's the thing is that's the ideal sense, is that you have at least 3 copies. And the reason is that you want something like file history, which is connected to your computer all the time. Because it's connected to your computer all the time, you also want to have offsite backup. So you have your working file, your file history, and a cloud backup or something that is stored offsite, whether it's an image backup that you unplug that drive and store it somewhere else or whatever. So you really want 2 copies local. So your working files and a local backup that is easily accessed. And then you want something offsite as well.
So what would you recommend as the second local copy then? We have file history. Okay, that's all.
Yeah, no, your working file is the first copy. So the working file is on your computer. That's your original copy, or that's your original file. And then you have, it's your first copy is your working files.
Okay, thank you. Now I got it. Now I can count to 3.
Okay.
Hey, outstanding. 2 outstanding presentations today. I really appreciate it. And coming up the second Wednesday in April is Jolyn Bowler from the Hilton Head Island Computer Group. And she's going to be talking about Android's powered ecosystems. And she's going to explore Pixel phones and tablets and other Android devices. And Dale Harrington from Micro PC in Denver is going to give us an overview of the various operating systems. And then we're off to 2 Linux presentations.
And I can tell you that that's going to be on the new distros we haven't looked at before on Arch and Manjaro, and a second presentation on system monitoring files that come with Linux, because everybody says, well, Windows has this thing. Well, Linux does too. So that'll be our 2 presentations on the 3rd Wednesday of April.
And on April 22nd, I'm working on one basic cybersecurity for personal computers and mobile devices. Haven't heard back, but if you have a presentation that you have given to a group, or if I can find it on your website, like I found John's from Willow Valley, I was looking at what they were doing, and oh Lord, there and behold was his OneDrive presentation. Sent him an email, and he was nice enough to say, yes, I will give that presentation. So that's what's coming up, and we are finished. You want to do your goodbye thing, John?
Oh, absolutely. Not before I say thank you to both Chris and John for taking their time today. And thank you for all the attendees for coming to listen to our presenters.
And learn.
Yeah. And hopefully we'll have people say, like Bob did, I took the oath and I went out and got some external drives and I started using some of these software. And so, go back through and you can check to see what we did earlier this month on backups. So thank everybody. We will call it quits.